Do your children go to school in Melbourne? Are you interested in how their school might be shaping them for the future? I'm Crystal, a regular Melbourne mum interested in all things to do with schools. In this podcast, I want to talk to the people in the education system in Melbourne, including parents, students, and maybe even some principals to get a better understanding of what goes on in schools and how they're shaping our kids. It's time to go to school on the Melbourne Schools podcast. Morning parents, today I'm chatting to Lisa, a mum of 3 kids, 2 of whom go to Mentone Grammar. One son graduated from Mentone Grammar last year. She also has a daughter at Mentone Girls Grammar. I saw Lisa in the Melbourne Schools Discussion Facebook group, saying some interesting things about her son's journey through education, and I thought it would be interesting to hear her thoughts. So welcome to the podcast, Lisa.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I saw some interesting comments from you about your son's educational journey. Can you tell me a bit about that now?
Yeah, sure. Look, I guess like every parent, I agonised over the decision for where to send him for high school, many sleepless nights. And we had a great local public school that had started up, so decided to send him there. I thought for him, he was very into sports and stuff. I thought being sort of a big fish in a small pond would be a good fit for him and being able to shape the new school. So he started at Beaumaris Secondary College. And unfortunately, it just didn't end up the right fit for him. I think it's a great school. I know lots of people whose kids go there and, you know, it's amazing and they have great things to say about it. And we didn't have a bad time there. I just could see that he wasn't thriving as much as I thought he would, and he wasn't kind of shining in the way that I thought he might be able to. And I think it's because it was very early days for him, so he was only the second year into the school, and I think a lot of things were being established and a lot of things were still sort of finding their way. So I just knew sort of at the end of year 8 that it just wasn't feeling right for him. So we made the decision to approach Mentone Grammar and see if they would have a place for him. Obviously, as well, it was very difficult. We had COVID at that time. So he was dealing with online schooling. He'd done that for the whole of his year 8. And, you know, then we were getting into year 9 and it was happening again. And I think, you know, that certainly had a major part in him maybe not integrating with the school as well as he could have. So we'd kind of been through that journey. It was a difficult time for everyone. And so we approached Mentone Grammar and they had actually just started a new boys class and a new girls class in that year 9 year because they had a lot of interest from various places. So we managed to get a place for him. And we decided, this was a bit of a mistake, we decided to start him halfway through year 9 because year 9's a really big year at Mentone Grammar. They do a lot of development stuff, like a lot of schools. They do a lot of special camps, a lot of special development programs. They do a great cafe program where they learn to run the school cafe and all sorts of stuff. So we thought, okay, we'll start him halfway through so he'll get a bit of that. He'll get to make friends. He'll get to really settle in and then be sort of hit the ground running for year 10 through to year 12. Well, of course, there was another lockdown within a week of him starting. And so he ended up pretty much on homeschool for the rest of that year. So it wasn't the best start. And he had an amazing mentor teacher for his class who really, really worked hard to try and settle him in, and a really good year level coordinator. So the school was great, but it was just not, I guess, the start we were looking for. But, you know, then everything settled down. And from then, you know, year 10, he was still finding his way, but he was really fortunate that Mentone Grammar runs this house system. And from year 10, they go into sort of every morning they go into a mentor group with their house group, and it's a mix of year 10, 11 and 12. And they have the same house teachers sort of take them through from year 10, 11 and 12. And he was really fortunate that the 2 house mentors that he had just I don't know, they saw something in him and they thought he had potential. And it was quite funny because he's a swimmer. So he was swimming really early in the morning and then he'd rock up to mentor group and he was starving and he'd take food in and it's like, I'm not sure if I meant to do that. But they were saying, yes, yes, eat, stay, that's fine. And they saw something in him. And I think they really just kind of took him under their wing and they helped him develop towards leadership positions. They helped support him. One of the teachers could see he was struggling a bit with his maths and knew that he was doing a lot of outside training with his swimming and life saving and other stuff. So approached teachers and got him some extra help and support. And yeah, so it just went from there. So I saw a kid basically transform from someone who was doing okay at his first school, but not, just not glowing or shining, to someone who was just really engaged in school, loving it and really wanting to go and be a part of it. So that was really exciting and it just got better and better from there. But I'm sure we'll touch on that as we go. But yeah, it was great. It was a good transition for him and definitely worth it. And, I said to a few people, there are lots and lots of great schools out there, but not every school will be right for your child.
Yeah.
So you really need
Yeah.
to consider your child, their strengths, their challenges, their interests, and have a look at each school and see if it'll fit you. And again, not every child in the same family will suit the same school. So, it was a hard journey, but we got there in the end, and I was really happy.
That's really interesting. I really like the story because I think it shows that what I believe is that different environments will be right for different kids, and I think different people will thrive in a different environment. So yeah, hearing that journey from going from his change from one school to another school and had seemingly bringing out like a totally different child is really interesting. What do you think was like the main factor? Like, what do you think was the difference in environment?
Yep. So for him, because he's heavily into his swimming, I think that was the first thing. He was swimming at Mentone Grammar, so he was swimming
Right.
4 mornings a week, and
But he
then
wasn't
it
swimming at Beaumaris.
no, no. Well, he was doing like swimming sports and stuff like that,
Uh
but
huh.
his squad program actually runs at the Mentone Grammar pool.
Oh, right.
It's
Okay.
run by a separate company, but it's physically at that location. And
Yeah.
I think the really good thing for him was he kind of felt a part of it already, and what the kids would do is they would do their swimming till 7:30, and then they would all stay on and they'd eat their breakfast and they'd study together, and it
Oh,
was
there's a very like,
really,
community.
yeah, real
Like,
community, a real sort of family feel, and all the pool
mm,
staff were really supportive and
mm,
stuff. And then it kind of grew from there, in that because he is very good at swimming and he was a part of
mm,
that culture, and Mentone Grammar, that swimming is one of their sort of areas of excellence and somewhere
mm.
where they have some focus. He then really was able to shine in that area and um, start to get visible and known. And I mean, he's not a
Yes.
kid. He doesn't like to be in the spotlight. Quite the
Right.
opposite, actually. He
Yeah.
likes to fly under the shadows and hope that no one kind of notices. But he
Yeah.
had no choice,
Because he was
because
so good at
he
swimming.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
doing well, and
Yeah.
he would do AGSV competitions and all schools
Mm.
relays. And the teachers got to know him, the coaches got to know him, the kids got to know him, and I think he really started to feel like, oh, I do belong here and
Yeah.
stuff. And I think as well the culture was good for him. He's a really hard worker.
Mm.
He's always had natural academic ability, but he has focused his energy, I would say, more on his sport. So,
Mhm.
he was
Mhm.
training, 20, 25 hours a week on sport, which meant he
Mm.
wasn't focusing as much on his schoolwork. But I think when he got to Mentone Grammar and saw this real culture, particularly from year 10 onwards,
Mhm.
I would say, of kids just striving to do really well academically and,
Mm.
working towards their university or their career or whatever it may be. And I think, A, because he's quite competitive, and likes to be seen to be doing as well as everyone else, and
Yes.
B, because he's a hard worker, he just got really caught up in that culture.
Mm.
And I think
Mhm.
it was a really good fit for him because he felt like, oh yeah, this is kind of what I'm about. I like to work hard. I like to do well, and
Mm.
everyone does here. And it's not to say it wasn't the same at his other school, but he never kind of got to that point of that year 10
Yeah.
and 11 and 12
Yes.
crux years where it probably would have
Yeah.
switched around for him. So he really loved the culture at Mentone. He started to make some good friends. He loves footy as well. So
Mm.
when he did his winter sport, he made some good friends through footy. So I'd say it was friendship. It was, even though Mentone Grammar's, a stricter school than where he was at, and there's a lot of discipline and structure and strictness. I think he really thrived in that environment, and I think even though that's all there, the teachers are very, very approachable, and they're very caring, and they really get
Mm.
to know the students and stuff. So he felt like he was really supported by the teachers, and
Mm.
as I said, he had those couple of people sort of championing him and supporting him.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. He just felt like he belonged. It was his home,
I think
and
that's
and
such a major
yeah,
factor to feel like you belong.
yeah, and that he could thrive in the areas that he was good at.
Yeah. Yeah. What is he doing now, by the way?
He's doing a double degree at Deakin in sports science and sports management, so
Oh, okay. So
totally, totally his niche.
oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes, so yeah, he's 3 weeks into that.
Mm.
First week he hated because he couldn't find a park and he couldn't find where he was going. But yeah, he's settling in and he's enjoying that now.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. So you were talking about the culture at Mentone Grammar. So do you think that it's got a sporty kind of culture? Like I know some schools are like, they have an academic feel or a sporty sort of feel or artsy, creative field. What do you think that Mentone Grammar has? Because I don't know much about the school, to be honest.
It's a great all rounder, to be honest. So there
Mm,
is a strong sports culture, but
mm,
it's not. I think it's very inclusive. So they have Saturday sport, and I know some people are a little sort of resistant of that whole Saturday
mm,
sport sort of
mm-hmm,
thing. But I think it's done in a way where it's really fun and really
mm,
inclusive. So they've got their first teams, or in younger years their A teams and B teams, but they also have like C and D teams, and they all go on the bus to wherever they're going, and it's lots of fun. So my second son, he's not as into sport
mm-hmm.
as my older one, and he still really enjoys Saturday sport. And the
Yeah.
thing I love in recent years, they've had a new sports manager. I don't know what his exact title is, but Brenton Sanderson has joined, and he saw a bit of an issue, particularly after COVID, I think, where kids were dropping out of sports a bit and
Mm,
not turning up for Saturday sport and stuff.
mm-hmm.
So they've added in a lot of broader sports that are just more of a fun base and not too
Like
full
what?
on. So they've added in life saving. So
Oh yeah.
my older son's just been coaching the life saving group. So they come down the beach and they learn skills and they do
Mm,
do active stuff, but it's not too full on. They've
yeah.
added rock climbing, they've
Oh,
added
cool.
golf, they've added a bunch of stuff like strengthening and conditioning. So
Mm,
lots of different things that mean that every kid, even those that aren't highly competitive, can find something to suit them. But what
mm,
they also do this thing called, I think it's called the SMART program, and I tried to find it on the website this morning and I couldn't. But one semester a year, they can do, rather than Saturday sport, they can do something that's not sport. So they can do, there's a list of options. They
mm.
can do art, or they can do esports, or they can do something more technology based. I think there's some like music production and stuff
Oh.
like that. So there's other things they can do. So there's definitely a sport element,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say their performing arts program is amazing as well. They built
Mm.
a new performing arts centre a few years ago now, and they put on a senior musical, a junior musical, and a senior play, I think, and a junior play maybe
Mm-hmm.
every year.
Mm-hmm.
They have numerous bands, choirs, all sorts of stuff. So their music and performing arts is very, very strong. It's not something my boys have been particularly into, but I know kids that are, and they say
Mm.
it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Very good with visual art as well. I've noticed they have quite a number of students continue on to visual art in year 12 and have pieces on display at like the post VCE special kind of things they do and stuff. So yeah, I would say it's a great all rounder. It's quite academic.
Hmm.
It's quite sporty. It's quite.
It
It's
seems like
nuts.
everything.
I feel like anyone can kind of go there and find their place. So my
Hmm.
second son, he's very into, he likes sport and has fun with it and does it, but he also likes chess and he does esports. He actually represented the school
What's
nationally
esports?
with that. Yeah, so it's gaming.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
I see.
and look, they don't. That's not the biggest focus at the school, but I like that they offer that opportunity,
Yeah, for
I
kids
don't
who
mind my
aren't
son
as,
doing it because he does
yeah.
lots of other stuff. It's not
Yep.
the only thing. And yeah, chess club, and he's in all the extension programs, so he does a lot of the competitions and like there's the Da Vinci decathlon and they
Hmm.
do a stock exchange competition and stuff. So there's lots of stuff that goes on, and I think
Hmm.
really I like that. It may not be at the elite level with some of the sports, like some of the schools, like I know Brighton Grammar and Haileybury
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. There's a lot of draft picks and that. We've got some amazing people in sport at our school.
Mm.
Don't get me wrong, but I think I like that it's a bit more of a relaxed focus.
Yeah, yeah. And the Saturday sports is compulsory? Is that?
It is.
Yep.
And we found that a little bit tricky for my older son in summer because he had a lot of life-saving
Other
carnivals on the
stuff, yeah.
weekend. But the good thing is, if you're into swimming, you can do swimming as your summer sport. And
Mm-hmm.
that means you don't actually have to do Saturday sport. You just have to do squad training. I don't know, he does 4 mornings a week, but I think
Mm.
it was, 2 or 3 mornings a week you do squad, and that's fine. That was perfect for him because he was kind of doing that anyway. And then you have to represent the school at AGSV swimming and all schools relays. So yeah, I
Mm.
mean, there's different ways, and as I said, they can do that other program instead for one semester where they do the SMART program and do something different. But I
Yeah.
think that does run on Saturdays as well.
So is that a one semester? Did you say one semester
So
year
I think they can only do SMART program one semester out of the two.
ever?
They need to do the sport, the other one.
Oh, one semester out of every year.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
So they
okay. Oh,
can,
so that's a half a year. Okay.
yeah. So they can choose. Well, they kind of do summer and winter sport, and
Yeah,
so they
yeah.
can choose to do this other alternative program
Mm.
for either summer or winter, but not both.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
But
I
my kids
see.
have never done that. They've always just done the sport because
Yeah.
they enjoy that. So yeah, but there are other options there for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you speak about so many different aspects of Mentone Grammar. For me, I must admit that Mentone Grammar is one of those schools that has really sort of flown under the radar for me. Probably because it's a bit far away from me,
Yeah.
and the only real thing that I know about it is that it's right next to the beach,
Yes.
which I'm always jealous about. What are the facilities like there? Because I know the campus is it quite sprawling because it's in yeah, right next to the beach, like on the ocean, isn't it?
And it's not the one that's right
Oh,
on the beach is Mentone Girls
is
Grammar.
that Mentone Girls?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just back in a bit. We're not far. We're just
Yeah,
a 5 minute walk.
I'm sure
But
I
actually,
drive past it.
yeah, yeah. Actually, we're just sort of on the corner near Warrigal Road and Como Parade, I think. But
Mm.
yeah, look, the facilities are really good. As I said, we had a new performing arts centre built. That was probably it was a while ago now. It's probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Mm.
But just last year and the year before, we had a new building built for the kind of Bayview, which is year 5 to 8. So we've got a whole new multi-level building. It's got it's an amazing facility. It's got a sport field on top of it, and my son was telling me the other day he went to something in there and there's actually a gym, an underground gym under it. So they've really utilised the space
Mm.
to
Mm-hmm.
incorporate lots of different facilities into there. I think they're always thinking about their facilities and always making effort to upgrade and improve. I
Mm.
have to admit it's not the most important thing to me, so I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
When I first did the tours of Mentone Grammar many, many years ago, I was yeah, I was just not that interested in the
in
facilities. I just
facilities.
wanted to
Yeah.
make sure there was good open green space, which there is,
Mm-hmm.
and that, I wasn't feeling cramped up and all that sort of stuff. I
Yes.
think the school is growing at a rapid rate,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that they need to stay on top of making sure they've got enough facility to cater for
Mm.
that growth. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's probably a problem in lots of schools. There's
Mm.
a swing towards the private schools, and they're all, having bigger intakes. So I just
Mm.
think it's okay at the moment. I
Mm-hmm.
think they definitely needed to build that new
Yeah.
building that they've just done,
Yeah.
and I think they do need to stay on top of that for the future as they
Mm.
move forward, and just keep an eye on the growth to facility rate. It's not that sprawling. We kind of cover, you know, a couple of blocks. They cross the road for the junior school, and the
Mm-hmm.
senior school's on the other side. But what they do is they utilise their sports facilities, sports grounds in Keysborough.
Oh
So
wow, do
when
they?
the kids go for their sports training, so tied in with Saturday sport, every year level will have one full afternoon a week of doing sport, and they will mostly go to the Keysborough playing fields by bus and do their
Mm.
sports training there and come back. So they have got a big lot of land in
Oh,
Keysborough that
okay.
they use for their sports training, and a lot of the Saturday matches when their home games happen there as well. They've got a big oval at school. They've got certainly got sports space at school,
Mm.
but
Mm-hmm.
not enough to have,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the kids doing their training. So yeah, so they've got that option, they've got that
Yeah.
facility, which is great.
Yeah, just to backtrack a bit, you were talking about touring when you were touring schools. How did you end up choosing Mentone Grammar? Like, were there other schools that you did look at when you were thinking about
Well,
changing?
so when I was touring, that was more back before I made my first decision.
Mm.
So I did a tour of Mentone Grammar quite early on, and then I just kind of got in my heart that I wanted him to go to the new local school. And I must admit, I didn't do too many other tours from there.
Mm.
And so then I didn't actually retour Mentone when we made that decision. I just knew from, I think by that stage, you've got a lot of friends who've got kids in there, and you're talking to
Right.
people who are there and
Yep.
stuff like that. And so I think, and he had friends there, and I just kind of knew what the vibe was coming out of there. So I
Mm.
didn't tour again at that point, and I made the decision, I guess, based on what I was hearing from other parents, and
Yep.
and also I think what he'd seen through his swimming and just being on site and stuff like that. So yeah,
Oh, I see. So you had a little bit to do with the school before you actually
yeah, I think
enrolled
through
him.
the
Yeah.
swimming, just being there on site. I mean, we weren't in the school itself, but I knew enough from talking to people, and I think
Mm.
sometimes the tours. I was overwhelmed just by what I'd seen and heard. I think if you go for lots and lots of tours, it possibly becomes more and more overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
because every school will have something amazing, and
Mm-hmm.
every school will have something you don't like.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
inevitable. And so if you try to find the perfect school by going to 20 different tours, you're probably just not going to find it.
Mm. Mm. You're probably right. I've been to, I think, more than 30 now. More out of interest.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I've got some. I think I've got a good idea of what I'm looking for. But now
yes.
it's just I just find it really interesting how different all the schools are.
Yeah, yeah, they are. And obviously, you've got a different focus. You're not just
Yeah,
doing that to choose for your child. But
anymore.
look, yeah, I know it's tricky and it's hard to choose. And,
Mm.
there's, as we've said, there's no school out there that's perfect for everyone. But you
Mm.
just got to, I would recommend doing the tours. Definitely, I think it's worth going and getting a feel for it.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped us with our primary school choice. Is we just went with one that felt right for us. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean it's hard. But I didn't particularly do a tour of Mentone prior to
Yeah.
that transition, and
Yeah. I
particularly,
think.
and also because it was COVID, so it was hard to do
Yeah. Yeah.
tours.
Oh, tell me about it. Yes. I think. I mean, the way that you chose Mentone Grammar is probably the best way. Like, if you know people that go there, and you can have a one-to-one chat to them. And if you know several people who go there, even better. I think that's the best way to choose a school rather than going to a tour or asking people on Facebook. It's difficult. Like everyone's gonna have their own opinion and own experience at each school. Yeah, so yeah, it's tricky. I wanted to also ask about parallel learning because you did mention that as well. I did not know that Mentone Grammar had parallel learning.
Yeah. So from year 5 to 8, it's parallel
Mm.
learning. in year nine, they switch. So all their core subjects are still parallel, but they start to choose some electives for year nine, and their electives are co-ed. And then from year 10 to year 12, it's fully co-ed. So
Oh,
yeah,
so year 10 to year 12 is fully co-ed.
yes, for all their
Ah,
classes, and
yeah.
that's when they join together and they're part of their house group for mentor in the morning,
Uh-huh.
and that's all co-ed, and then their classes are co-ed.
Oh,
And you find some subjects are more naturally skewed towards male or female, but in general, yeah, it's co-ed. Um,
yeah. That's interesting. I did not know it was parallel learning. Like, how did you find that for your kids?
That's an interesting question. So my eldest didn't really get to experience it because
Oh, yeah.
he was in an all boys class for his second half of year nine when he joined. But as I said, that was kind of online, so not really much to experience there. But my second boy that is there, it's a tricky question for me. I think as the parent of a girl, and if she was there, I would say it's amazing and it's the right thing. But my middle child, he's very academic and he's very
Mm.
studious.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, when he went into year seven, it was off the back of COVID
Mm-hmm.
again.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the boys just struggled to sit through a whole class and a whole
Right.
day. They struggled with the structure. They struggled with being full time in school. And,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with them. They're good kids. They've just
Mm.
been through that really difficult COVID time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my son got quite frustrated with that because he really wanted to learn and wanted to be academically engaged. So there were a few frustrations. But look, I mean, overall, he had still had a great experience. But I
Mm-hmm.
do think at times I wonder if he may have been better in
A
probably
co-ed
in an all girls
environment.
class, to be honest. But in a co-ed class. But look, I wouldn't say it, I think it's a good idea generally, and I do
Mm.
understand that boys learn differently to girls, and so they tailor the learning around that for those first few years. And I think there was probably some definite benefits to be gained. I think it was just maybe wrong timing for him off the back of
Yeah.
COVID, and
Yeah.
that there was a little bit of disruption in that sort of year seven year particularly, and but then it settled down, and he had a fantastic year nine year in the
Mm-hmm.
parallel learning, and year
So
eight
he's in
was
year nine.
good.
He's
So
in year
he's in
nine
year
now.
10. He's
Oh,
in
he's in
year
year
10
10
now.
now. Oh,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he's fully co-ed now.
Yeah, so year seven was a little tricky, but then I don't
Yes.
know, maybe that was just because it's year seven and
It's
they're
also
all
a new
struggling
school
to
as
settle in.
well.
Sorry?
It's also a new school for a lot of people as well,
Yeah,
I think.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. So there's a lot of change.
Mm.
And then year eight, yeah, it started to settle down, and,
Mm.
the kids. And I think the good thing is the school is pretty good with their discipline and stuff and their support. And so they, put things in place to try and help the kids that were struggling to focus and settle in. So, yeah, look, I think overall parallel learning's a good idea.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm not sure we saw the full benefit of it, but I think a lot of kids probably do. And I certainly think because, like a lot of co-ed schools, there is a bit of a disproportionate male to female ratio.
Mm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
different schools have different,
Yes.
we're more male to female, but I know some are more female to male. And so I think for those first few years of high school, it's good for the girls to have, their own class space and
Separate
stuff like
class.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Ah. And you were also talking before a bit about the year nine programs.
Yes.
What can you tell me a bit more about what happens? Because it sounded pretty amazing. Like you were saying that they run the cafe or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. So it is really special. It's so they do a number of camps, and they do a big camp, which is I think it's 10 to 12 days, and they can choose from about 8 different locations. So one is far north Queensland. They do sort of snorkeling,
Mm.
Great Barrier Reef. One is Ningaloo Reef over in Perth. Then there's one in Sydney. There's one in um, Kangaroo Island
Oh
or
my god.
wherever. There's one in
All amazing
Tasmania.
places.
Yeah,
All
there's
amazing
lots. But
places.
the one my son ended up doing was a top end immersion in Northern Territory, and they went through Kakadu, and they went a
Wow.
lot of it. They want them to have a community service element. So
Mm.
all of the camps have an element. They want them to be challenged and pushed outside their comfort zone. They want them to have a community service element, and they want them to have a level of sort of Indigenous element as well. So my son, as I said, went to Northern Territory. They did some work with some homeless people up there. They did some tree planting, and they did some, some hikes and some things that probably would have been challenging. So that's an amazing experience, and they really want it. It's not just let's go and do some sightseeing and stuff. It's really
Mm.
about challenging them
Mm-hmm.
and making them sort of take themselves to the next level. They also do something called City Week, where they get a bunch of activities that they do in the city, but the important thing about that is they need to try and get themselves there and back, and then have some level of independence and self-direction to manage their way. Of course, there's teachers when they get in there, and
Mm.
most of them go in a small group. They don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily go by themselves as such, but it's about navigating the public transport and then getting in there, and they have a series of special talks and activities and stuff like that. So that's great as well. But the other thing they do is called Cafe Program,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a little. The year nine. Well, the first interesting thing is that the year nine cohort has their own building. It's called Greenways, and
Mm-hmm.
so they're in their own space, so they have their own polar fleece that they wear instead of
A
the
uniform.
blazer. They have to wear their
Oh,
blazer for assemblies and formal things, but they've got this polar fleece with their
why is
name on
that?
it, and so they're treated like they're really special, uh,
Okay.
and they feel really quite special in that environment. So they've got their own building, and in this building is a little cafe,
Mm.
and they have two wonderful staff run the cafe, and they have a rotation. And what they do is they all go and they do a food handling course, and
Mm.
they do go into the city and they do a barista course.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then they come back and then they have two blocks of rotations in the cafe. And I think I don't know, I think it's about 4 days. And so then they've got to be there at like, I think it's 7:30 a.m. and they are doing coffees, they're
So they
making
serve their
food.
friends.
Well, teachers as
Yep.
well, yes, friends. So yeah, they run the cafe, but they do food as well. So they make
Mm.
muffins, they make biscuits, they
Oh, cool.
make paninis, they make all sorts of stuff.
Mm.
And then also as part of that, they've got a project where they are putting groups, and for one of the days that they're on the cafe program, they have to make like a meal, like lasagna or fish and chips or whatever, and they need to. It's really cool. They have to budget it all out. They go to the shops themselves and buy all the food. They come back, they make it all, and they sell. And then teachers and kids and stuff can order online, and then they sell the food. And they obviously do
Mm.
all the finances around that, and they all the planning and stuff. So it's a really great experience. And then they do a second week of cafe as well. But I think they only do the project in one of those weeks. But also parents are invited. So I went in when he was barista, and he got to make me a coffee and stuff like that. So, and he got really into it. He went and researched all the different coffee types and how to make
Oh, how
them,
awesome.
and like I just know flat white and cappuccino and latte, but he was spilling out all this other stuff that I had no idea about. But it's also good because it gives them experience of kind of working, and they come out
Yeah.
with that
Yep.
barista and the food handling certificate,
So
and
they
so
get a
that helps
certificate.
them.
Yep.
Yeah, they can put it on their resume, and they
Yep.
can use it to apply for jobs. The other thing they do in year nine, sort of in that sort of vein, is they also do a CPR course and first
All
aid
right.
course,
Wow.
so they come out with that
Yeah. So a lot of
certificate.
practical skills in year
A lot of
nine.
practical skills, and I think for the one part, you kind of sit there and go, are they actually ever in school doing schoolwork? But they
Learning.
are. And
Yeah.
there is a lot of
Yeah.
academic stuff happening as well.
Yeah.
But I think, a lot of schools now recognise that that's a real turning point developmentally for the kids.
Mm.
And, that point where they are turning into young adults, and to give them those practical skills and to build their confidence out in the real world is, I think, what then does make that big difference then heading
Yeah.
into those senior
Yeah.
years. So look, it was an absolutely brilliant year for him. I'm just disappointed my older son didn't get all
Mm.
of
Oh,
those
I see.
opportunities. They
Yeah.
were great. Actually, they held over the camp for my elder son to year 10, but they couldn't do all the 7 or 8 different options. But they did have a good development sort of camp and stuff. But yeah, it wasn't the same for him. And I really saw my middle son. He's very, very smart, and he's a really good kid, but he sometimes lacks that social confidence. And so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think some of those activities they did last year were really transformational for him and will
Yeah.
help him to move forward. So it was great.
Yeah, I think that sounds amazing. Like, I mean, to have that sort of thing in school. I mean, I feel like those are the sorts of skills that you sort of will take away with
Mm,
you, like to be able to run a cafe, like to actually to get that kind of practical experience and to be able to budget something and
yeah,
cook a meal. I mean, I think that yeah, I think it's amazing to have those sorts of programs. So that's probably the second school I've heard of that does that kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not very common.
right, yeah, okay, yeah.
Hmm. Was there anything that you didn't like about the school?
I think you've kind of covered it off. The only thing I was
Okay.
going to mention was that parallel learning that I
Yeah.
felt that it wasn't the best for my son in year
Mm,
seven, but it got better from there. I
yeah.
think as well, the other thing we've discussed is that growth. And I think in
Mm,
the last couple of years, Mentone Grammar's had two really big intake years in year seven, and I think they've recognised that that was perhaps a little too big
too
and that
big.
they're looking to maybe scale it back a bit. And I
Mm,
think, it's a fine line between schools needing to make sure that they've got the fees coming in to cover off all the amazing things they want to do,
mm,
but versus, not getting too big and then
yeah.
losing some of that sort of personal touch and
Do you
some of
know how
that
many
connection.
students there are?
I don't. I should have
No,
checked
I
that.
probably should have
Sorry.
looked it up. No, that's okay. I'll
But,
we
but
can
I
all look it up.
know, I know last year's, I know for not this year's year seven, last year was about 300 and something intake for
Intake,
year
yeah.
seven, which was a lot bigger than my son's years, which is around the 200 mark. So you can
Mm,
probably figure out the numbers from there. But I think they're going to wind that back a bit. And also, as I said, it's not such a big problem as long as you've got the facilities and the
mm,
resources and the
mm-hmm.
staff and that to cater for it. So
Yes.
they just need to make. I don't think it's necessarily a negative, but
Mm,
it could be if they don't do it properly. And I
yeah.
think I just worry that one of the things I like is it's not a small school, it is a big
Mm,
school, but it's
mm.
not so big that it's lost its personal touch. And I just wouldn't like to see it become so big that,
You
people
get
get a bit
lost.
lost. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So it doesn't become one of those massive schools with
yeah.
thousands of kids.
Yeah, but other than that, look, I mean,
You've obviously had a
every
really good
school,
experience here.
yeah, really good experience. But every school has a few communication challenges here and there and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And there've been moments where I've eye rolled and like, why are we finding that out now? But look, I
Yeah.
have to say it's pretty few, and I've been very impressed with everything. Their parent teacher interviews, their reporting,
Oh yeah.
academic reporting system is amazing. I
Oh,
love
tell
it.
us about that.
It's called SPS, which I
Mm.
think stands for Student Performance System. I'm not sure exactly. SPS. And basically, when you go into this system, you can see for your child their overall average across all their subjects. And then you can drill down and you can see for each subject their average for that subject. And then you can drill down and you can see each of their individual assessment tasks and what their marks were for that. And you can also see the comments. And so like obviously every teacher is different, and some teachers put lots and lots of feedback, and some teachers don't put so much. But overall, you can really track really well how your child is
Mm.
going, and not that you want to be on there every minute of
Yeah, there's
every
nowhere to
day.
hide.
I know, I'm sure some parents probably are, but I just like to be able to see. And what I think it also does really well is it enables that communication between the parent and the child. And you can say, oh, I see you got whatever mark on this assessment. How do you
Mm.
feel you went with that? What do you think you could have done better?
Yeah,
What
yeah,
do you think you really excelled at? And you can have those conversations and really be understanding what's happening at a
yep,
really
yep,
detailed level.
yep.
And I think the thing I like about this assessment compared to some others that I've seen is it's really clear and it's really easy. It's not, you don't have to scroll through pages and pages of screen to figure out how your child's doing in one subject. And you don't have to click on a million buttons to find it out as well. And that flows into what I also think is amazing is the way they do their academic awards at the end of the, well, they do the mid-year and end of year. I know a lot of schools just do subject-based awards, but what Mentone Grammar does, which I love, is they do two more general, well, they do a few more general awards, but from a sort of high performance perspective academically, the top 10% overall average gets what is called an academic excellence award, and the next 10% get an academic merit award, and then they have subject awards as well, and they have encouragement awards and hard work sort of awards as well, which I love. But the thing I love for my son, my middle son, who's a real sort of math science focused brain, but he wanted that academic excellence award and he's wanted to get it every semester. And so it's pushed him outside his comfort zone on subjects that he's not so good at. So he got a few assessments, he got 100% for drama. And it just made me laugh because he's so not into drama, but he just
Oh,
wanted to try hard. And
yeah,
so whether it's humanities or,
yeah.
or drama or art or food tech or stuff that it's not really, his natural ability or in his comfort zone, he's really pushed himself. And I think that's really important. He could easily, if it was just subject awards, have just focused in more on his maths and science. But I think it's given him broader life skills and broader options going into those higher end years. And I just really like that they encourage that overall sort of approach as well. So I've really loved that. And not all schools do that. And I think as well, it gives kids a good chance to get awards and to strive for something. Whereas I feel like some schools that I've been involved with, they're a bit too narrow and there's only 3 or 4 kids in each year level getting an
Right.
award. And
Yeah, like
therefore
the
the kids
top
just
kids.
go, oh,
Yeah.
why bother? I'm not going to get one. So why am I
Yeah,
going to
that's
bother?
true. Yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah, I think it's good. I mean, you've got to find that balance. You don't want every kid getting an award because then there's nothing to strive for.
Yeah.
But having that balance of a good number of awards in some good categories, I think is really good. So I really do love that about the school as well.
Is there, can you describe the leadership there? Like, would you be able to, is there some sort of vibe that you would be able to describe of the leadership?
Yeah, look, we had a new principal start at the start of last
Oh,
year.
really? Okay.
Yeah, so our previous principal, Mel Cader, he'd been there for years and years and years and years. I should know this figure, but and I believe he was a student there himself, and then he was principal, and he was actually going to retire prior to in the COVID year or prior to. No, it must have been in the first COVID year. And then he decided he needed to stay on and see the school through that difficult period, which was great. And is a really larger than life character. He's very visible, very vocal, very well known. And so whereas Andy Miller, who's come in now, I mean, he's wonderful, and the kids have a lot of respect for him, and he seems to be building a really good profile. But I would say he's not quite as visible yet, and probably the vibe is just different with the two. But it's a really strong leadership team. I think all the leaders are the kids know them. They're actively engaged with what's going on. They're not just sitting in offices,
Yeah.
behind their computers. They're walking around the school. They're getting to know the kids. They're getting to know what's going on, and they're approachable. The kids feel that they can
Oh, that's good.
talk to
Yeah.
them if they need to. So yeah, I'd say, and there's a focus on getting women into leadership roles, which I like, and I'd say it's a good balanced leadership team. They're strict and structured, and all of that, but they are approachable, and they are, they're happy to have a laugh and to get involved. So I think, the new principal is finding his way into all of that, but I think that, he's settling in well, and that I think
Yeah.
there's good times ahead for us. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
okay. And there hasn't been like a cultural change since the new principal came in? Because I know sometimes that happens.
No, look, I don't think
Pretty
so.
smooth.
Not that I've seen, because I don't know, I think when you've got a really positive culture in the school, and I do think the school's motto is happy, healthy, and high achieving. And I love that, because I really feel like that is the culture, that, there is this striving for excellence, and there is this hard work, and all the kids are trying to do well, as I said, particularly from that year 10 through, but I feel like there's this balance of being happy and, doing the things you love. So when my son did year 12 last year, he's a really hard worker, as I said, and he was really focused on his studies, but he still did footy. He still did some of his life-saving training. He still did some of his swimming. He had a girlfriend. He had a job. He has friends.
Wow.
He had a
Okay.
social life.
Yeah.
But, he was smart about saying, okay, I'm not going to go to every party. I'm going to go to the parties of my
Yeah.
good friends. I'm going to see my girlfriend once a week. I'm
Yeah.
going
Oh,
to
that sounds very
just do 2
balanced.
shifts a week at work. I'm going to cut down my training and stuff like that. And he did exceptionally well,
Really? Yeah.
to the point that he got an academic scholarship into university. So
Wow.
he did really well.
That's
But he
amazing.
had fun. He had a great
Yeah.
year. He
Well,
had
it
an
sounds like you had a
enjoyable
very
year.
rich, yeah, it sounds like you had a very rich experience in your
He
school.
had a lot of balance,
Yeah.
and he walked out of the school just feeling like he'd had a good year. But don't get me wrong, there were times of stress, um, leading into exams and stuff. But overall, I never felt worried about him, and I never felt like
He sounds
it was.
like he's got, he sounds like a decent person with his head screwed on, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, but I would say, coming back to culture, I feel like that was what was surrounding him as well,
yeah,
and
I
that the
see.
school
Yeah.
encouraged that balance, and that, the friendship group he was in,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't speak for everyone at the school because I don't know, all the different groups, but certainly the groups that he was mixing in, there was that balance, and I felt it was great. And the other thing I love about the school, which I do want to mention, is they then go on to employ the kids after year
Oh,
12 to come
wow.
back and run the coaching programs.
Yeah.
So my has been involved in running the life-saving program. He's involved in helping out with swim carnivals and stuff like that. And then he's been asked to help with footy coaching. They get them back for tutoring. They get them back for various things. And I think it's wonderful because the kids, you know, most of the kids, all the kids I know, have left the school and loved it. And it's so good for them to still be a part of it
Yeah.
and to be able to, of course, they're getting paid for the work they're doing, but they still feel like they're giving back and that they're helping to mentor that next lot of kids coming
It's good for
through.
the current students
Yeah,
too to see
yeah,
what the alumni are doing.
and they still feel connected. And so when they're going off to uni and it's a whole new and overwhelming thing, they don't feel like it's just been cut off. You
Yeah.
finish school, off, you're off on holiday
Yeah.
now. There's no connection. They feel
Yeah.
connected. They feel a part of it, and they feel like they can shape that future group coming through. So I think that's really
Yeah.
wonderful. And not all the kids do it, but the opportunity is there, and they really encourage it. So yeah,
Sounds like a really strong community.
yes, definitely.
Is there anything that you would like to say that I haven't covered, that I haven't asked you?
I don't think so. I wrote a little list, so let me just check. No, I think we've covered everything.
No, we've covered
Oh
everything.
no, I do just one last thing I was going to say.
sure.
There is lots of help. So there's before school, lunchtime, and after school sort of
Academic help.
tutoring and help. Yes, academic help, and the teachers are just really supportive. I was always worried that some people say when kids go to private school, they're spoon fed and stuff like that, and that wasn't my experience. My experience is if the kids are willing to put in and do the work, the teachers will give them all the support they need. And as an example of that, my eldest son in year 12, he submitted about 15 English essays between the September holidays and his first exam. And I didn't realise this at the time, and I was a bit embarrassed when I found out afterwards. But his teacher marked every single one of those. And
Wow.
look, if he hadn't submitted those essays, she wouldn't have been telling him to. She wouldn't have been saying, hey, are you going to submit essays? He chose to do it.
So he wanted to practice.
He wanted to practice, but he was in a culture where a lot of the kids were doing it. He did it, and the teachers are willing to put in the time for those kids that try. So I think there's a lot of support and assistance for kids that are willing to put in, which I think is great as well.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like an amazing school you've just spoken about.
Yeah. I think I've covered it all now.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for having a chat to me. I've loved learning about Mentone Grammar. Like I said, I didn't know very much about it, but yeah, it sounds like an amazing place.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. Remember that the content that you hear on this podcast is of a general nature and should not be used to make any decisions about schools or anything else. If you want to learn more about schools in Melbourne, make sure you visit the website www.melbourneschools.com.au. You can also join thousands of other parents in our community at Melbourne Schools Discussion Group on Facebook. See you there.